She sat alone in the dim light of her kitchen, hands trembling as they hovered over the telephone. The grief still clung to her like a fog she couldn't shake, dense and suffocating. It had only been a few weeks since she'd lost the child. 6 months along, the heartbeat had stopped. No warning, no explanation, no goodbye. Her arms ached to hold someone who never arrived. In her sleep, she could still feel the flutter of little feet. In the silence, she swore she heard a voice that didn't come from outside of her, but from somewhere ancient and invisible, wrapped around her bones. Desperation isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's the quiet motion of reaching for something, anything, that might explain the unexplainable. That's what led her to the name she'd only heard whispered in church basements and hushed radio broadcasts. The man who could speak in sleep, who accessed something deeper than intuition, a man known not for showmanship, but for the impossible clarity of what he revealed in trance. She submitted her request without much hope, but then a letter came. Her reading was scheduled. The day arrived like a crack of light under a locked door. As she sat with her palms pressed together, the voice began to emerge, T7, not the familiar one she'd heard in her dreams, but the voice of the man, unconscious, but speaking. What came through wasn't vague, nor was it general. It was personal. It was precise. It was her. And then it wasn't him speaking anymore. It was the spirit of the child. The room went still. She felt her breath tighten. The air changed. I am not gone, mother, the voice said. I am only farther away from your eyes. But I am closer than ever to your soul. She wept, not because she was frightened, but because something in her already knew. The dreams, the pull, the way her body still instinctively protected the empty space around her. The child had never left. He had only changed. The spirit began to speak about those 6 months in the womb, not as a loss, but as a sacred mission fulfilled. It described sensations, colors, warmth. It recalled the way her voice vibrated through her bones when she sang. It spoke of a song she had made up on the spot, humming nonsense as she folded a blanket she had bought too early, too optimistically. It was a lullaby she had never told anyone about, not even her husband. But the spirit remembered. I was with you, the spirit said, in every quiet morning when you pressed your hand to your belly. I was learning what human love feels like. That knowledge is mine forever. She covered her mouth to keep from crying out. It was too specific, too exact, not metaphor, not allegory, memory, shared memory, allegory, between worlds. The spirit went on, explaining that its time in her womb was not cut short, but completed, that not all souls come to stay. Some come only to taste, to touch, to activate something ancient in their parents. This soul had known before incarnation that the journey would be brief. It had chosen her, specifically, for reasons her mind would not yet understand, but her heart already did. I came to help you remember something you forgot, the spirit said. You were once like me, close to the light. You forgot. But when you cried for me, you opened that place again. She sobbed now, full-body tears, the kind that don't just release pain but carry messages between dimensions. The voice paused, then resumed, not as her child, but as a presence explaining the unseen architecture of souls. Each womb experience, however brief, offers a unique education, not just for the child, but for the mother, the father, the family. These are not accidents. These are ancient contracts. Her hands shook, but she listened. What you call loss is transformation, it continued. We are not only your children, we are your teachers. We agreed to this moment before time had shape. She had heard of such things, pre-birth agreements, soul families, the weaving of destiny before physical form, but they had always felt abstract. Yet now, spoken through the voice of someone she had once carried inside her, they felt like more than theory. They felt like memory waking up. The spirit then described her husband's silent breakdown in the garage, how he had waited until she was asleep, how he had gripped the steering wheel of his old truck in the dark, not to drive, but to hold on to something solid while his heart caved in. She had never mentioned it to anyone, not even to him, but the spirit knew. Love leaves marks, it said, even when unspoken. We feel it all. Then came the message that would follow her for the rest of her life. The spirit declared, You are still my mother. I will walk beside you. I will whisper when you doubt, I will guide when you are lost, and one day, when time folds, I may come again, but not as you expect. The reading ended, but something stayed with her, something rooted. She wasn't sure what she believed when the call had started. She wasn't even sure what she believed now. But she knew what she felt, not emptiness, not absence, but connection, a golden thread across an invisible space. She was no longer mourning a lost heartbeat, she was carrying a continuing relationship. In the following weeks, she began noticing things: the sudden warmth on her skin during a moment of grief, the flicker of light on a photo, the feeling of being watched, but not by a stranger, by someone familiar, by someone small, but ancient. She would later write that her sorrow didn't vanish, but it changed shape, it became sacred, it became the soil in which her awareness grew. She didn't need to understand every part of the experience intellectually. She had received something better: direct knowing. The years went on. She never forgot the voice, never forgot the reading. She never again felt the same kind of emptiness she had that night in the kitchen before the call. Because once you know your child is not lost, only changed, you begin to look for them everywhere. And every time she sang that same lullaby, she felt him there, humming along. She didn't need a monument. She didn't need a grave. She had a bridge between this world and the next, built not from stone, but from love. And love, she had learned, is the only thing that death cannot touch. What that spirit gave her wasn't a replacement for her grief, it was an expansion of her soul, a crack in the fabric of everyday perception wide enough for a message to come through. And through that message, a truth that so many carry in silence, that no life is wasted, that every soul, no matter how briefly it stays, is a teacher, that even in loss, something deeper is being born. She had made a call in desperation, but what she received was a reunion, and in that reunion, the beginning of a lifetime of spiritual awakening, not because she sought out answers, but because one small spirit, who stayed for only a little while, had spoken back. It begins long before most people realize, not at the flash of conception, not at the first heartbeat or ultrasound flicker, but in the quiet orchestration of soul intention. Somewhere beyond time, before a single cell divides, a soul begins its descent, not like falling, but like remembering, gradually, cautiously, with reverence for what is to come. The soul doesn't rush in, it watches, it studies, it aligns. There is a mistaken belief that life begins with biology, that the moment sperm meets egg, a soul is launched into the body like lightning striking a tree. But in truth, the soul's journey into form is not an instant. It is a process, layered, sacred, and often invisible to the human eye. What many fail to realize is that pregnancy is not just a physical event, it is a multidimensional unfolding, and the soul is not a passenger. It is an active participant in its own arrival. Spiritual records gathered over decades, particularly from those who entered trance states to access higher realms of understanding, reveal a consistent theme: the soul chooses its entry point with care. The body may form quickly, but the soul lingers at the threshold, moving closer in phases. Like a diver preparing to enter the ocean, it first acclimates to the waters. It lowers itself gradually, adjusting to the density of matter, to the emotional blueprint of its future parents, to the spiritual contracts encoded in its DNA. One spirit described this process as a spiral descent, not falling down, but winding in, like silk thread weaving through the layers of time. In the earliest weeks, the soul remains mostly outside the body, hovering near the energy field of the mother, observing the formation of its physical vessel. It listens to the environment. It studies the emotional climate of the home. It begins to attune not just to the mother's heartbeat, but to her fears, her dreams, her longings. As the weeks pass, the connection deepens. Around the third or fourth week, there is a moment of touch, a brush of soul essence against the forming embryo. It is not yet full embodiment, more like a hello across realms. At this stage, the soul may still change its mind. If the emotional readiness or energetic alignment is not present, it may withdraw and wait for another opportunity. This explains why some early pregnancies end without explanation, not as failure, but as recalibration. By the second month, the soul begins to move closer. It still retains fluidity, able to shift between spiritual realms and physical awareness, but its tether to the body strengthens. The fetus, still small and largely unconscious, becomes a kind of sacred doorway. 9. A space where the soul may begin to feel human emotions for the first time. The heartbeat it hears is not just physical. It carries memory, intention, vibration. Each beat becomes an echo of purpose. Around the third month, something changes. Many mothers report vivid dreams, emotional surges, or a sudden sense of presence. This is not imagination. It is the point at which the soul begins to partially anchor. It may not stay fully embedded yet, but it now has a foot in both worlds. The dreams a mother has may no longer be her own. They may be messages from the soul, introductions, shared memories from before this life, or rehearsals for the love story that's beginning. By the fourth month, a kind of partnership is formed. The soul begins to influence the energy of the body more directly. One spirit described this time as emotional training, the period in which it learns the texture of human feeling by experiencing the mother's moods, joys, and worries. Not to be overwhelmed by them, but to understand them. Every laugh, every tear, every whispered wish becomes part of the soul's education. It is by the fifth month that most souls become what spiritual teachers call semi-incarnated, that is, partially integrated into the fetus, yet still fluid enough to retreat when needed. The body is not yet a prison, it is more like a garment being tailored to fit. This is when a soul often begins to communicate directly, through dreams, sensations, or even sudden emotional clarity in the parents. A sense that this is no longer just a pregnancy, but a relationship. Many ancient cultures understood this intuitively. They held ceremonies during the fifth month, not just to bless the body, but to welcome the spirit. Some native traditions believed this was when the soul could begin to hear its name. In Eastern philosophies, this midpoint of pregnancy marked the beginning of karmic activation, CUA, the time when the soul's past experiences begin to whisper into the growing personality. The sixth month is often a threshold. In spiritual readings, this is the stage where the soul begins to practice being human. It will briefly merge into the body for longer stretches, then retreat. It will try on the skin of emotion, test the boundaries of thought. Some spirits describe it as walking in two worlds, still connected to the divine, yet now aware of the limitations of form. This is also when many mothers begin to feel their child's presence, not just physically, but emotionally and psychically. They speak of feeling watched, guided, even loved. By the seventh month, the anchoring deepens. This is the point where, according to many spiritual sources, the soul becomes more firmly attached to the physical form. There is still movement between realms, but the body now becomes a primary home. This is why dreams during this time often intensify. Why mothers report feeling emotionally flooded, even if their life circumstances haven't changed. The soul is no longer a visitor, it is now an inhabitant. From the eighth month onward, the soul begins final preparations. It starts to forget, intentionally. The higher memories of its spiritual origins begin to fade, like mist lifting under morning sun. This is necessary. In order to fully enter the human experience, the soul must be willing to lay down its celestial memory to enact, at least temporarily. It is an act of trust, of courage, of sacred surrender. And then, by the ninth month, the soul is ready. The descent is complete, not because the soul has fully merged into flesh, but because it has fully accepted the terms of its mission. When the body emerges into the world, it brings with it a whisper of divinity, wrapped in skin. But the journey of arrival has already been long underway. Not every soul completes this journey. Some come only part of the way, by choice, by design, or because the spiritual agreements have been fulfilled in those early months. For them, the womb is not a waiting room. It is a classroom, a sanctuary, a temple. They do not fail to arrive. They simply arrive in a different way. They stay long enough to awaken love, shift energy, fulfill contracts, and then they return to spirit. This is why the question of when life begins is not a matter of biology alone. It is a question of soul, of consciousness, of presence. And what becomes clear, again and again, through sacred transmissions and maternal knowing alike, is that every pregnancy is a spiritual event. Every moment in the womb is infused with meaning, and every soul arrives exactly when and how it is meant to. It is not the flicker on a monitor that defines the beginning of life. It is the silent descent of an ancient traveler choosing, again, to become human. There are no clocks in the soul's journey, no calendars, no deadlines. The love formed between a mother and her unborn child doesn't obey the rules of time or logic. It emerges instantly, instinctively, from a place beyond comprehension. It is older than memory, yet feels as new as breath. That love, even if formed over days or weeks, does not fade when the heart stops beating or the body ceases to grow. Instead, it expands. It becomes something else, something eternal. Many parents who have experienced pregnancy loss speak of an ache that never fully goes away, but what they often cannot explain is the sense that someone is still with them, a name they continue to say in whispers, a presence they feel during quiet moments, a kind of invisible closeness that defies every rational explanation. What if that presence isn't a memory, but a continuation? What if love beyond the womb is not a sentiment, but a living connection? Over decades of documented spiritual communication, again and again spirits have revealed the same truth. The bonds formed in the womb do not break with death. Instead, they deepen. The womb is not simply a physical space, it is a sacred chamber of spiritual imprinting. When a soul visits, no matter how briefly, it leaves an energetic trace. It is as if a blueprint of love is etched into the parent's body and spirit, one that lasts far beyond the pregnancy. One spirit, who had spent only 12 weeks in the womb, communicated this astonishing message. "You taught me the frequency of human love before I ever opened my eyes. That love is now woven into the architecture of my soul. I carry it with me. I serve through it." This spirit did not speak of absence or regret. It spoke of gratitude, of purpose. It described the womb as a sacred classroom, where it had received its first lessons in compassion, vibration, and connection. These teachings are not just for the child. The love goes both ways. In one documented case, a mother who had miscarried at 9 weeks reported dreams that felt more like visitations. In them, she was held, not holding, but being held, by a being of light who whispered, "You loved me," in silence. That love echoes across galaxies. She had never spoken to anyone about how deeply connected she had felt to her child, even during those few short weeks. But this visitation confirmed what her heart had known all along, that her love had reached its destination. There is no such thing as too soon when it comes to love. The soul recognizes love in its purest form, not by how long it is expressed, but by how deeply. The moment a parent dreams of their child, sings to their growing belly, or feels a sudden wave of affection at the sound of a heartbeat, those are soul signals. The soul feels it, records it, responds to it. In the afterlife, these bonds become even more important. Spirits who experienced interrupted pregnancies often describe themselves as love guides. They say the love they received during their short time in the womb becomes a kind of energy signature, a guiding light they follow. One spirit explained it this way: "Your love is my compass. It points me towards service, learning, and evolution." That love doesn't just comfort them, it empowers them. Some of these spirits go on to work in what they describe as soul nurseries or comfort stations, spiritual places where other souls who experienced brief incarnations gather to learn, grow, and assist those still grieving on earth. The love their parents gave them becomes their tool, their offering, their healing balm. They are not stuck, they are not waiting. They are working, with love as their foundation. For parents, this love often becomes a thread through their entire lives. It may show up as a sudden wave of warmth in moments of grief, as synchronicities, seeing butterflies, hearing a favorite lullaby, or dreaming of the same child again and again. These aren't just signs. They are the soul's way of reminding the parent, we are still connected, we always will be. One mother described how, during moments of anxiety or fear, she would feel a sudden calming energy wash over her. It was subtle but unmistakable. Years later, in a session with a spiritual reader, the spirit of her unborn daughter communicated, "That was me, I promised I would guide you. I kept that promise." This spirit had remained close, not as a ghost, but as a guardian, a soul tethered not by tragedy, but by enduring love. Fathers feel this too. Though their bond is not physical in the same way, it is no less powerful. One father, who lost his child during the second trimester, reported dreaming of a young boy standing beside him during his hardest moments, when he lost his job, when his father died, when he questioned his own worth. In each dream, the boy never spoke. He only stood there, eyes steady, hand extended. Years later, during a reading, the father was told, "That child was yours. He chose to protect you." The man wept, not because he was surprised, but because deep down, he had always known. Love beyond the womb is not a metaphor, it is a relationship, an active, living connection that moves through time, across dimensions, and into the very cells of those left behind. Science cannot yet explain this, but the heart doesn't need proof, it only needs permission to believe what it already feels. When we allow ourselves to acknowledge this kind of love, something shifts. The grief is still there, but it's no longer a wall. It becomes a window, a way to feel instead of forget, to honor instead of silence. And in doing so, we allow the bond to keep growing. Because love does not stop where life ends, it only changes shape. Spirits often describe their parents' love as the first language they ever understood. Not English, not words, but vibration, emotion, intention. That silent promise whispered through the womb, "You are wanted, you are loved, you matter." That promise, once made, becomes unbreakable. No amount of time can erase it, no death can end it. In fact, this kind of love often becomes a soul's signature across lifetimes. Spirits speak of returning to the same parents in future lives, drawn by the unmistakable frequency of that original bond. They come back not by accident, but by recognition. They know the souls who loved them, and they choose them again. Even in cases where the child never returns, the love still creates transformation. It changes the parents, it softens them, opens them, deepens them. Many report discovering spiritual gifts, heightened intuition, or a calling to help others. These are not coincidences. They are the ripple effects of a bond that transcends the physical. And so, if you've ever wondered whether your child felt your love, know that they did. If you've ever asked whether that love meant anything, know that it meant everything. It became their guiding light. It became your spiritual legacy. And together, across time and form, you are still walking the path of love. Because, in the end, love beyond the womb is not just something that remains. It is something that grows. It is the invisible bridge between two souls who chose each other, not for a lifetime, but for eternity. There are moments so personal, so intimately woven into the inner world of a parent, that not even their closest companion knows about them. A lullaby hummed alone while folding tiny clothes. A whispered promise spoken in the quiet of night to a growing belly. A breakdown in a garage while the world kept moving outside. These moments often remain unshared, not out of shame, but because they live in a sacred space too vulnerable to name. And yet, again and again, through dozens of documented readings and spontaneous encounters, spirits of unborn children return to recount these exact moments, not vaguely, not symbolically, but with pinpoint detail, the kind of detail that no one else could know. These are not dreams, not hallucinations, they are communications, messages that cut through grief, fear, and doubt to deliver one overwhelming truth: we were there, we still are. One woman, after losing her child at just under 5 months, sought no public help. She grieved in silence, telling no one, not even her own mother, about the song she had made up during the pregnancy. It had no lyrics, just a melody that came to her while sitting beside the window, watching the sun move through the trees. It comforted her, made her feel closer to the child she never got to meet. Years later, in a reading she almost didn't attend, the medium described a child's spirit who came forward laughing gently, saying, "You sang me into light, I remember the window. I remember the song." The melody was then softly mimicked through the reader, off-key, unfinished, but unmistakably hers. The woman collapsed in tears. She had never sung that tune aloud to anyone else, but her child had heard it and remembered. Another father reported receiving a message that made his hands go cold. He had cried alone in the garage 3 nights after the miscarriage. He had said nothing to anyone, not even his wife. But the spirit, speaking through a medium with no access to his history, told him, "I saw you in the truck, gripping the steering wheel, trying not to brake. I was beside you then. You didn't cry alone." The man, who had considered himself a skeptic, changed that day. Not because of belief, but because of recognition. There was no way to explain it, but every part of him knew it was real. The specificity of these communications defies conventional logic. They include references to items that were bought and never used, tiny shoes, a knitted cap from an aunt. They include conversations whispered in despair, dreams never told aloud, and fears tucked away in journals never opened again. These are not the kind of details that could be guessed or generalized. They are the fingerprints of a conscious presence, one who saw, heard, and remembered. In one recorded case, a spirit described the exact moment a mother placed her hand on her belly during a thunderstorm and said, "You're safe with me." She had been alone. She had spoken the words as a kind of mantra, not expecting any audience, but the spirit, speaking years later, repeated the phrase, word for word. "You're safe with me," it said. "And I still am," the woman broke down, not from grief, but from the overwhelming realization that nothing had been lost. That moment had not disappeared into the void, it had been received. These messages come not to reopen wounds, but to heal them. They carry a frequency of love, of truth, of deep knowing. One spirit revealed that it had watched as the mother sat by an empty crib weeks after the loss, reading a book aloud. "You kept reading to me," it said. "Even though I was gone, I wasn't. I was listening. These aren't just signs, they are conversations, ongoing, subtle, but profound." Many parents report sensations that accompany these messages. A sudden warmth, the feeling of being hugged when no one is around, the flicker of a light when a memory surfaces. Some hear a name whispered as they wake, others feel a hand on their shoulder when they're close to despair. These are not coincidences. They are the echoes of a relationship that continues, just on a different frequency. Perhaps the most astonishing aspect is how these spirits communicate information that leads to healing, not just emotionally, but physically. In one case, a woman struggling with chronic anxiety after a stillbirth received a message from her child's spirit, instructing her to begin a specific meditation practice. "You're holding me in your chest," the spirit said. "Let's breathe together." The woman began a breathwork routine with that phrase in mind. Within weeks, her panic attacks lessened. Within months, they disappeared entirely. The message had been more than comfort, it had been medicine. Spiritual researchers and therapists alike have begun to take note of these patterns. Though the data is anecdotal, it is consistent and powerful. Parents who receive these highly specific messages often undergo profound shifts. Their grief transforms into connection. Their doubt becomes clarity. Their sorrow begins to alchemize into something radiant, into love that serves a new purpose. One spirit, having spent only 16 weeks in the womb, described its role as a memory keeper. It said, "I remember everything you did for me, every hope, every prayer. I hold them like gifts." That same spirit revealed that it had been visiting the mother's dreams for years, always in the form of a child playing near the ocean. She had never mentioned those dreams to anyone. She thought they were her imagination's way of coping, but the spirit said, "I brought the waves, I brought the breeze. It was me, saying, hello." Another parent spoke of receiving a message that she would see her child again, not in the sky, but in the eyes of someone to come. And sure enough, when her daughter was born years later, she said there was a moment, just one, where she looked into her child's eyes and knew. "I'm back," she whispered. And something inside her whispered back, "I know." These stories are not meant to convince. They are not arguments. They are love letters across time and space, and they prove something quietly revolutionary, that consciousness continues, that our children are not gone, that they are watching, remembering, loving, even when the world forgets, even when we try to move on, even when the pain feels too great to carry, there is someone carrying it with us. So if you've ever spoken to your child in the silence, if you've ever whispered, "I miss you," in the dark, if you've ever felt that sudden surge of warmth for no reason at all, know this: they heard you, they remember, and in their own way, they are speaking back, not through thunderclaps or flashing lights, but through the quiet certainty of a memory only you would know, a moment only you could have shared, a love only the two of you ever understood. Because, in the realm of spirit, nothing is forgotten, and no message is ever lost. There's a quiet contract made long before any heartbeat flickers, long before any pregnancy test turns positive, or any nursery is imagined. It's made in a place without time, where souls speak not with words but with resonance, an understanding deeper than language. And in this sacred space, some souls choose a path few understand, a path not of long life, but of brief presence. These are not lost souls, they are volunteers. They do not come to be held in arms for years, but to touch the heart in seconds. They come not to complete a life, but to begin a transformation. To the human mind, it's hard to grasp. Why would a soul choose such a short stay? Why would it enter the womb only to leave before birth, or soon after? The answer lies not in the limits of biology but in the expansiveness of spirit. These souls, often called bridge builders by spiritual teachers, come not for themselves, but for others. Their mission is not about duration, it's about depth, a moment of presence, a surge of love, a crack in the emotional armor of a parent who, before this soul arrived, had forgotten their own depth. One spirit described it this way: "I did not come to live, I came to open." My mission was your awakening. Parents often ask themselves, amid tears and unanswered questions, what was the purpose of this pain? Why did this happen to us? But again and again, through readings, dreams, and unexplained inner knowing, they are met with the same answer. It wasn't punishment. It was a sacred appointment. The soul who came knew it would not stay. It came anyway, not to harm, but to serve. And the transformation begins almost immediately. Even the realization of pregnancy can trigger a deep soul shift. Suddenly, life has meaning again. Priorities change, something stirs in the heart, and even when that life doesn't reach full term, the change remains. The parents are not who they were before. The soul planted something that blooms in its own time. These short-term spirits often speak of choosing their families with care, not for perfection, but for readiness. They come where healing is possible, where growth is overdue, or where a new beginning is needed. One spirit communicated, "I came to make space, space for your tears, space for your strength, space for the child who would come after me, who needed your heart softened." Many such spirits speak of their roles as path clearers. They are like wind before a storm, or sun before a bloom. Their presence removes what needs to be cleared: fear, emotional blocks, dormant grief. One mother who had been closed off for years, unable to cry even after the loss of her own mother, found herself weeping uncontrollably after a 6-week pregnancy ended. But something inside her knew. It wasn't just grief for the pregnancy, it was grief that had been waiting for release. That spirit had come, she later realized, to break the dam. Some spirits arrive not only for the parents, but for the family as a whole. In several documented cases, the experience of pregnancy loss united estranged family members, reopened spiritual dialogue, or led to long overdue emotional reconciliation. These outcomes, though painful in origin, carried the fingerprints of divine design. The spirit did not leave chaos behind, it left healing in motion. In karmic terms, these brief incarnations often carry the energy of balance. There are souls who, in other lifetimes, may have caused harm, and in choosing a short life, they return to offer balance, to serve instead of take, to awaken love instead of fear. But this is not penance, it is evolution. These souls are often described as mature, even advanced. They do not need long lessons. They offer their presence as a kind of spiritual contribution to the healing of others. In one striking case, a spirit who had only stayed for 3 months in the womb later communicated that its mission was to awaken the mother's forgotten gift of intuition. "You needed to remember how to feel the unseen," the spirit said. "I made your body listen again." The mother, who had suppressed her own sensitivity for years, began experiencing vivid dreams, premonitions, and spontaneous emotional insight. She would later become a counselor for other grieving parents, guided by the child who had never taken a single breath. There is also a kind of cosmic strategy in the timing of these spirits. They often arrive during turning points, moments of existential questioning, life changes, or periods of spiritual stagnation. Their presence, however brief, acts as a spiritual catalyst. One soul explained, "I came to shake the snow globe of your life. You had forgotten how to see the wonder in the storm." The emotional aftermath may feel like devastation at first, but it is never without meaning. The grief, though sharp, becomes fertile ground. The parents become seekers. Their hearts, once broken open, become more capable of holding love, empathy, and even joy. And often, they go on to touch the lives of others in ways they never would have if that soul had not arrived. The mission of these souls is not to be mourned endlessly, but to be honored. They ask not for candles, but for awareness. Not for shrines, but for growth. When parents realize that their child's purpose was fulfilled in its brief stay, they begin to heal, not by forgetting, but by recognizing that what was given is not gone. It is alive in their transformation. One mother shared that after her miscarriage, she began noticing a pattern of dragonflies appearing at moments when she felt most lost, not 1 or 2, but always 3. Later, during a spiritual session, the spirit of her unborn child communicated, "I ride the 3rd one, the one that lands closest to you. I always come first." She had never told anyone about the dragonflies. The message didn't just comfort her, it realigned her entire view of what had happened. Her child hadn't failed to arrive, he had arrived perfectly, and completed his mission. In this way, the secret mission of the unborn becomes a thread in the greater tapestry of human awakening. Each soul, no matter how briefly present, weaves something essential, something only they could offer. And as that thread is felt through grief, love, and eventual understanding, the parents they leave behind become part of the mission too. They become the storytellers, the healers, the ones who hold space for others. The ones who say, "I know this pain, and I know its purpose." So, if you've ever felt that your child came and left too quickly, know this: it wasn't a mistake, it wasn't a punishment. It was a choice, brave, profound, and holy. That soul chose you not to break your heart, but to prepare it, to soften it, to awaken it, and in doing so, that soul fulfilled its mission completely. There's something sacred about twins, something that even science has trouble explaining. From the moment 2 heartbeats form together in the womb, a connection is forged that transcends biology. It is not just physical proximity, it is soul proximity. Many say twins are born with an unspoken language, a shared emotional rhythm, a sense that they are never truly alone. But what happens when one or both don't make it to birth? What happens when their journey is brief, their presence felt more in silence than sound? The answer, whispered through dreams, signs, and spiritual messages, is this: they never truly leave. In dozens of documented spiritual readings and first-hand experiences, unborn twins have returned, not as echoes, but as active, conscious presences. They describe a bond that remains untouched by death. Not even the veil between worlds can sever it. Whether one twin survives or neither does, their spirits continue together, working not only on their own soul's path but as guardians of the family they once stirred awake. One mother, who lost twins at 24 weeks, described years of feeling a pair around her. She could never explain it. No children lived in her home. There were no photos, no visible reminders, yet every time she closed her eyes to grieve, she felt 2 distinct presences, not vague shadows, but unique personalities. One felt curious and bright, the other calm and deeply affectionate. She thought maybe she was imagining it until a spiritual reading revealed what she hadn't dared to hope. Her twins had remained together. They spoke through the medium, finishing each other's sentences, just as she had once dreamt they would. "We're still twins, Mother," they said, "just twins in a different dimension." That phrase alone shifted something fundamental in her. She no longer needed to question whether her grief was valid or her intuition real. She knew now that love had not been lost, only relocated. Many twins who pass before birth describe a continued mission of togetherness. They remain bonded as spiritual partners, moving together through realms of healing, learning, and service. They describe working in what some spirits call comfort fields, vibrational spaces dedicated to helping grieving parents find moments of peace, especially those who've lost more than one child. These twin spirits often specialize in synchronicity. They send signs not as proof, but as touchpoints, glimpses of their enduring presence. One couple reported seeing two identical butterflies land on their hands during a memorial walk, just after saying aloud, "We miss you both." Neither butterfly moved for over a minute. They sat there, still and silent, like witnesses. The moment brought tears, not of pain, but of recognition. Later that week, the mother dreamed of her twins standing beside her bed, smiling. No words were spoken. But when she awoke, she said it was the first time she felt truly comforted since their passing. There are also cases where surviving twins report feeling the presence of their sibling even as they grow. One boy, born after a twin was lost during early pregnancy, insisted throughout childhood that someone else lived in his room. "He talks to me," he would say, pointing to the empty side of the bed. His parents assumed it was imaginary, until during a meditation, the mother clearly heard a voice say, "He's not imagining, I'm still here." The bond between twins often transcends linear lifetimes. Spirits describe having incarnated together many times before, sometimes as siblings, other times as companions, lovers, or spiritual allies. They are often part of the same soul group, journeying through lifetimes with a shared purpose. In some lifetimes, one stays longer, in others, they reverse roles, but the connection never ends, it only transforms. One twin spirit who passed in the second trimester shared a breathtaking insight. "We chose to enter together, even knowing we would exit early. We weren't meant to stay. We were meant to open your hearts, and to hold each other on the other side." These words struck a chord with the parents, who admitted they had grown closer after the loss, more spiritually aware, more attuned to one another. They no longer saw the pregnancy as a tragedy, but as a blessing in disguise, one that reoriented their entire emotional compass. Another set of twins, who passed within days of birth, communicated that their mission had only just begun after their physical departure. "We work now in twos," they said. "Wherever there is double grief, we send double comfort." They described orchestrating moments of gentle recognition for other twin parents, finding ways to guide them toward the same sense of enduring love that their own family had discovered. They showed images of red birds, paired feathers, matching names heard in passing, not to prove themselves, but to gently stir the memory of connection. Some parents report hearing both names they had chosen, often in quick succession, from unrelated sources. A cashier calls out both names minutes apart. A book falls open to a page where the two names appear in dialogue. A stranger says them while telling a story. These are not coincidences. They are confirmations. The twins are reminding their parents, "We are still with you, together." There are even stories of future children, born years later, speaking of their older siblings with certainty. "I saw them before I came here," one girl said at age 3. "They told me to take care of you." She could describe their appearances with eerie accuracy, even though no photos existed. Her mother stood in awe, realizing that her daughter was not only guided, but chosen, prepared, and welcomed by the very souls she thought she had lost. In spiritual realms, twins are often described as soul harmonics, two notes from the same chord. When one note fades in the physical, the vibration of both still plays in the unseen. They work not just as individuals, but as a dyad, a spiritual duo with amplified presence. Many believe that the love between twins becomes magnified after death, allowing them to serve as a more powerful source of guidance for those left behind. Parents who have lost twins often describe the unique grief of dual absence, nines, the feeling of being surrounded by double silence. But what they come to realize, often through quiet moments or profound signs, is that they are also surrounded by double presence. Two souls, still tethered by love, still walking beside them, still whispering their names. One couple, years after their loss, planted a tree in honor of their twins. They didn't expect anything extraordinary, they just wanted a symbol. But that tree, a flowering dogwood, began to bloom in perfect symmetry each year, always with two dominant blossoms side by side, facing the house. They took it as a sign, not of magic, but of memory. These were not children who left, the mother said. They were souls who stayed in a different way, and that is the truth that twin spirits want us to carry, not that we are alone, not that they are gone, but that the love they came to share, the connection they carried from spirit to womb, is still alive, still working, still singing in the spaces we least expect. They are still twins, still bonded, still part of our family's story, and they never really left. They were never held, never rocked to sleep or kissed goodnight. There were no baby photos, no birthdays, no school mornings or sleepy lullabies, and yet their presence lingers, not like a memory, but like a silent witness, a constant, unseen companionship that makes itself known in moments of vulnerability, in dreams, or in sudden stillness. These are the children who didn't stay, the souls who came briefly and left before being fully known. But they did not vanish, they transformed. And what they became is something far greater than many can fathom. Guardians, eternal companions of the soul, watching over the very parents who once mourned them. For those who have lost a child before birth, grief often comes with a haunting sense of incompletion. The arms are empty, the crib remains untouched, the milestones never arrive. But time, and something deeper, begins to whisper a different story. The grief doesn't fade, it changes shape. And in that reshaping, many parents begin to feel something else rising from the silence, a kind of presence that does not age, does not change, but is unmistakably loyal, protective, alive. These spirits, who once nestled for days or months in the womb, speak now from the other side of the veil with a message that turns grief into grace. We never left, we became your guardians. It may seem difficult to believe at first. After all, how could someone who never took a breath become a protector? But again and again, in countless readings, meditations, and spontaneous experiences, this truth emerges with astonishing consistency. The soul, once bonded in the womb, does not sever that bond simply because the body could not hold it. That love becomes the very reason the spirit stays close. One spirit, who had passed at only 8 weeks gestation, communicated through a medium, "My time inside you was enough. I know your voice, I know your heartbeat, I am part of your energy signature now. Wherever you go, I go." The mother who received that message broke down, not from sorrow, but from relief. She had sensed something beside her for years, something she couldn't explain. Now she understood. It wasn't her imagination. It was her child, watching, guiding, remaining. These guardians are not floating aimlessly, they serve with intention. Some describe helping their parents avoid accidents, nudging them away from wrong turns or sudden impulses. Others speak of whispering calm into moments of panic, or planting ideas that lead to emotional breakthroughs. They're not there to control, but to companion, to guard, not just physically, but spiritually. In one particularly moving account, a father who had lost his child mid-pregnancy described a terrifying night when he almost crashed his car on a rain-slicked road. "Something told me to slow down," he said. Not just a thought, more like a voice I felt inside me. He later discovered, through a dream and a follow-up spiritual reading, that his child's spirit had been beside him that night. "I grabbed your wrist," the spirit told him. "You didn't know it, but I was with you. I always will be." Guardian spirits formed from lost pregnancies often describe themselves not just as protectors, but as emotional stabilizers. They serve as energetic buffers when the parent is overwhelmed by sadness, fear, or anger. One mother reported feeling a sudden wave of peace during an intense panic attack. "It was like someone covered me in a warm blanket from the inside out," she said. A few days later, in a moment of reflection, she whispered aloud to her lost child, "Was that you?" And in that exact instant, a light in the hallway flickered. It never happened before or since. Spiritual teachers often explain this phenomenon as a byproduct of pure love. The love exchanged during pregnancy, even if brief, becomes an unbreakable link. That link enables the soul to act as a guardian, not out of duty, but from deep connection. In fact, many spirits describe choosing this path willingly. "I knew I wouldn't stay," said one such soul, "but I knew I'd be able to help you better from the other side." In this way, these spirits become part of what some mystics call the soul family support network, a system of guides and guardians assigned to each human for specific phases of life. What makes these particular guardians so unique is that their bond with you was formed through the body. They are not abstract angels. They are yours. There's also a reason they stay so close. The grief you feel becomes their access point. One spirit explained, "Every time you cry for me, I feel it as a signal, a lighthouse beam. It lets me reach you more clearly." Grief, in this sense, becomes more than sorrow. It becomes the sacred invitation to deepen the relationship. And over time, the tears give way to a quiet awareness that you are not alone. Children lost before birth often return in dreams, not always as babies but as luminous presences, sometimes as glowing children, other times as wise, ageless beings. One father described dreaming of a teenage boy who stood at the edge of a field, watching over his home. "I knew it was him," he said, even though he never lived long enough to grow. The boy never spoke. He only smiled, nodding once before fading into the wind, but when the father awoke, his heart felt lighter than it had in years. Some of these guardians continue working beyond just their family. Once their parent has healed or awakened to their presence, they begin assisting others, especially those going through similar losses. They become part of a larger web of unseen helpers, spreading the love they first received in the womb outward into the world. Their purpose expands, but their bond remains. They are still your child, but they are also now much more. Many report feeling their guidance strongest during transitions, births, deaths, illnesses, major decisions. These are moments when the veil between worlds thins. When you find yourself staring out a window, lost in thought, and a calm settles over you, it might be them. When a song plays on the radio that you associate with the pregnancy, just when you need reassurance, not coincidence, it's contact. And there's one message these guardian spirits want to be heard most of all. You did not fail us. The guilt that many parents carry, the what-ifs, the second-guessing, all of it is seen by these spirits not as truth, but as pain that needs healing. One spirit said it plainly, "You were perfect for me, even if I didn't stay. That love you gave, however brief, is what made the bond eternal. It gave them a name, an identity, a mission. They carry it with them into the spirit world. They build with it. They protect with it. They return to you with it. You may never have rocked them to sleep, but they are the ones who now calm your heart at night. You may never have seen their eyes, but they are the ones watching through yours when you see beauty. You may never have heard them laugh, but they are the ones whispering joy into your darkest hours. They are the guardian angels you never met, but always knew. Somewhere beyond the veil of the physical world, past the thresholds of time and memory, there are places the living rarely imagine. Soft, radiant sanctuaries crafted not of stone or wood, but of light, energy, and intention. They do not exist on any map, and yet they are more real than any city built by human hands. These are the comfort stations of the afterlife, unanswered, luminescent realms where souls who experienced interrupted pregnancies go not to be lost or forgotten, but to rest, heal, and learn. And from these sacred sanctuaries, they reach back, sending waves of peace to the mothers, fathers, and families who still cry for them. These comfort stations are not places of punishment, nor are they holding areas for broken spirits. Instead, they are vibrant learning spaces, infused with unconditional love and maintained by advanced souls whose purpose is to guide, soothe, and nurture. Spirits who passed before birth arrive gently, often still vibrating with the love they received in the womb. The energy they bring, though quiet, is pure, radiant, and full of potential. And here, they are welcomed with reverence, not sorrow. Many accounts from spiritual readings, regressions, and near-death experiences describe these places in astonishing detail. They are said to shimmer like crystal domes suspended in a realm of gold and violet skies. Music flows through them, not heard through ears, but felt in the soul. The melodies carry recognition and healing frequencies, tuned specifically to each soul's journey. Gardens bloom without need of sunlight, trees with silver leaves sing when the wind moves through them, and streams flow with luminous water that imparts wisdom as it touches the spirit's essence. These realms are alive with purpose. The souls of children who did not live long in the physical realm come here to continue their growth, but not in the way we might imagine. Their growth is not about aging, it is about expansion, about refining the love they received and preparing it to be offered back to others. Here, the learning is gentle. The environment is built on compassion. There is no need for discipline, no pressure to advance. Everything moves according to divine timing. One spirit, who had only been in the womb for 9 weeks, described its arrival at a comfort station as being wrapped in velvet light. It said that there was no confusion, no fear, only a sense of coming home. I was greeted by others who had walked the same brief path. Some had stayed longer in the womb, some shorter, but we recognized each other immediately. We knew why we had come. In these sanctuaries, souls are given the opportunity to reflect, not just on their own journey, but on the emotions of those they left behind. With loving guidance, they begin to understand the grief of their parents, not as guilt or sorrow to carry, but as a sacred tether, a bond of love that still seeks connection. And from this understanding, a new mission is born. To become comforters, messengers, guides. These spirits are taught how to gently reach through the veil, how to send dreams that heal, how to whisper reassurances in moments of deep pain. They learn how to align their presence with signs, a butterfly at the right moment, a song on the radio, a flickering light. They study the emotional languages of their loved ones, so that when they return to visit, they do so with unmistakable gentleness. Every touch of peace a parent feels, every sudden sense of warmth or knowing, is often the result of these spirits learning to love in action. Some comfort stations pair each soul with a spiritual mentor, AI, an older, evolved being who guides their integration and preparation. These mentors are often described as beings of immense love and patience, radiating a light so warm it dissolves all remnants of fear. They help the souls understand the ripple effects of their brief time in the womb. They show them how their presence, however short, planted seeds that would bloom in their parents' lives in time. One spirit said, "My teacher showed me my mother's future, how she would open her heart to others, how she would write, speak, and heal. He told me, your mission began the moment she knew you were there. It continues every time she remembers you with love." In these crystalline halls, love is both the foundation and the goal. There are spaces where the souls engage in soul play, the forms of creative expression that exist beyond our understanding. Some paint with colorless light, others sculpt emotion into shapes that vibrate comfort. Many join together to create waves of healing that sweep through dimensions, targeting the aching hearts of those still on earth. And they don't do this alone. These children, now luminous spirits, form communities. They support each other. They form bonds that transcend their time in the womb. Some become specialists in assisting families with multiple losses. Others focus on siblings born after them. They attend what some spirits describe as love laboratories, places where they experiment with new ways to send reassurance, new methods to enter dreams without fear, new ways to show up without disrupting the natural flow of life. To the grieving parents who still ache, who still wonder if their child is safe, these spirits offer a message of certainty. We are more than safe, we are strong, we are growing in love, and we are working for you. They describe how, each time a parent speaks their name, lights a candle, or simply thinks of them with kindness, a beacon of energy shines into the comfort station. That energy feeds them, it expands their reach, it gives them more light to send back. It's a beautiful exchange, a cycle of love between worlds. The parent grieves, but also remembers. The spirit receives that remembrance, transforms it into peace, and sends it back. Grief becomes the channel through which love evolves, not an end, but a continuation, a shared language spoken across dimensions. And when a parent finally senses their child's presence, not as a memory, but as a living pulse within, the comfort station rejoices. That's the moment we wait for, one spirit said. When the sadness opens just wide enough for us to slip through and remind you, we never left. We only changed form. Sometimes, the most powerful signs don't come in moments of ritual or prayer. They arrive when the heart is unguarded, during a mundane task, a moment of laughter, a flash of nostalgia. The spirit enters, not to disrupt, but to participate, to say, I am still a part of your life, and I always will be. In that sense, the comfort station becomes more than a resting place. It becomes a launch pad, a sacred workshop where brief souls craft long-lasting comfort, where they become not just your lost child, but your luminous ally, where they prepare not to return to the body, but to return to your life in ways you never expected, more subtle, more patient, but just as real. So, if you have felt a sudden calm when there should have been none, if a flower bloomed in your yard for no reason, if you woke from a dream with tears of joy instead of sorrow, in Shidasile, know this: someone is sending you peace. From a realm where crystals hum and music heals, from a place built of compassion and quiet brilliance, from the hands of your child, who is still learning how to love you, and is doing it better every day. The soul is not limited by a single doorway. It remembers, it waits, it returns. And for many souls who came briefly, only to touch the womb, the heartbeat, the love of a parent before departing, the journey is not over. In fact, for many, it's only paused. The bond formed between a soul and its chosen family does not dissolve with death. It lingers, like a note held in the air, waiting for its moment to rise again. These souls, filled with purpose and love, often make a quiet promise before stepping back into the light. I will come back to you. I will come back to you. Across countless spiritual testimonies, regressions, and first-hand experiences, there emerges a remarkable and consistent phenomenon: reincarnation into the same family. Spirits who once left through miscarriage, stillbirth, or early infant death often return through future pregnancies. And when they do, they bring with them unmistakable signs that they have come back home. It doesn't always happen immediately. The soul may wait months or years, sometimes even decades. It waits for alignment, emotional readiness, timing, energetic harmony. And then, when the moment is right, it chooses the same parents, the same energetic field, the same lineage, not out of necessity, but out of love. One mother, after losing her daughter in the 7th month of pregnancy, dreamed night after night of a girl with golden eyes. The dreams were soft, recurring, and always the same. The child stood in a garden, never speaking, just looking back with familiarity. 2 years later, she conceived again. This time, the pregnancy was smooth. When her daughter was born, she had golden eyes that shimmered in the sunlight, something neither parent carried genetically. The mother knew before the child even cried. She's back, she whispered, and deep inside, her body and spirit agreed. These returns are not mere coincidences, they are part of a soul contract, a sacred agreement made long before this life. The soul, upon experiencing a brief incarnation, often remains tethered to the family it first touched. It doesn't leave in rejection or failure. It simply steps aside until the environment, or the parent's emotional landscape, is more fully prepared. And when it returns, it does so, carrying the love, the memory, and sometimes even the personality of its earlier form. Children who are reincarnated into the same family often exhibit traits that defy explanation. They may ask questions they shouldn't know the answers to. They may describe events that occurred before their birth, conversations their parents had during the pregnancy that ended, or memories of how their mother grieved. Some seem to arrive with a deep sense of recognition. They lock eyes with a parent and smile as if reuniting, not meeting. One boy, born 3 years after a miscarriage, began telling his parents at age 4, "I remember being in your tummy before, but I had to leave. I came back when the light was green." His parents had never spoken of the previous loss to him. They had barely spoken of it to each other, but in that moment, they realized the grief they thought had closed a chapter had actually begun a new one. Their son had remembered, and his words, innocent and matter-of-fact, were a healing balm to wounds long left unspoken. It's not just children who remember. Parents often report a visceral sense of familiarity. They describe holding their newborn and feeling not just joy, but a strange and beautiful recognition, like remembering a song from childhood, one you hadn't realized you'd forgotten. That familiarity isn't wishful thinking. It is a deep spiritual resonance, the return of a soul who had already made a home in your energy field once before. Reincarnated souls often come back with more clarity, more determination, and often with a purpose linked to their earlier exit. One spirit, who had passed at 20 weeks, later returned as a daughter born 5 years later. She would grow up to become a grief counselor for families who had experienced pregnancy loss. At 17, she told her mother, "I feel like I've been helping you since before I could talk." And her mother, with tears in her eyes, understood. She had. Another powerful story came from a mother who had lost twins during early pregnancy. She never spoke of the loss, but years later gave birth to a son who, by age 5, insisted he used to be 2 people. "There was someone with me," he said, "but she stayed behind. I came back first." He would go on to draw pictures of a little girl with matching features. When his mother asked what her name was, he said the exact name she and her husband had chosen, but never told anyone. These moments are not anomalies. They are reminders that the soul carries continuity, memory, and intent. The love given to a child during pregnancy, whether they are born or not, creates an eternal imprint. That imprint is not wasted. It becomes the foundation for a return, a reunion, a continuation. And while not every soul returns to the same parents, many do. Some arrive as a second child, others as a final, unexpected pregnancy. Some even return as adopted children, 9, drawn energetically to the same soul family, even if biology isn't part of the story. The pull of that original bond is powerful. It transcends logic. It obeys only the heart. Parents who are open to this truth often find comfort that is both immediate and lasting. Their grief softens, their understanding deepens. They no longer see the loss as the end of a life, but as the beginning of a longer, unfolding journey. They realize their role was never just to carry a body, but to welcome a soul. And that soul, when ready, will find them again. The soul's promise is quiet, but it is sure. "I will come back to you, when the time is right, when your heart is ready, when the path is clear." And when they do return, it's never just as they were, but as something more, wiser, more grounded, more complete. These children are not strangers, they are not new stories, they are the continuation of a love that never ended. So if you've ever felt that someone is missing, but also somehow near, if you've held a new child and felt the echo of one you lost, if you've dreamed of the same eyes, the same presence, returning again, know this: you're not imagining it, you're remembering it. Because the soul never forgets where it was first loved, and it will always find its way back home. Not all departures are endings. Some are repositionings, deliberate, wise, and far beyond what the human mind can immediately comprehend. Among the many revelations from spirits who left the womb early is a truth that stretches the boundaries of what we think we understand about timing, fate, and soul purpose. These are the spirits who came briefly and then departed, not because something went wrong, but because something larger was unfolding. a shift in the world. A chapter of hardship, conflict, or upheaval. And in their infinite foresight, these souls chose to leave not out of fear, but to serve from beyond the veil, where their presence could do more. They are the prophets of coming change. While many spirits who leave early speak of love, karmic balance, or family healing as their mission, a smaller but deeply significant group reveals something more cosmic. They came knowing that the world was on the brink of transformation. They sensed the turbulence to come: wars, pandemics, societal collapse, personal devastation, and in full knowledge of this, they chose not to remain, not as an escape, but as strategy. Not because they could not handle the world, but because their influence would be more powerful from the spiritual side. One such spirit, who had remained in the womb for only 16 weeks, communicated through a trance medium decades later. "I saw what was coming," the spirit said. "The conflicts, the darkness that would shadow the hearts of millions. I chose not to enter the storm. I chose to stand above it, to guide those within it from the light." The mother who received that message had always felt the loss of her pregnancy was different, less rooted in physical trauma, more like a quiet departure that never fully made sense. But after hearing those words, something settled inside her. It wasn't abandonment, it was reassignment. These spirits are often advanced souls, ESF, those who have incarnated many times and carry within them the wisdom of countless lifetimes. They come not to learn in the traditional sense, but to contribute. Their arrival is more like a scan of the terrain, an energetic alignment with the parents, and then a pivot to their true station: guardianship, guidance, and strategic influence from beyond. In spiritual terms, this is sometimes described as mission withdrawal for higher assignment. The soul had a purpose, but upon arrival, it recognized that staying would not serve the highest good. Remaining in the physical during times of immense chaos might limit their light. So instead, they ascend before birth, retaining their tether to the family, but shifting into a role of spiritual strategist. They become the ones who whisper to leaders, who send visions to the sensitive, who help entire soul groups adjust during crisis. It's important to understand that these departures are never rooted in weakness. On the contrary, they are signs of spiritual maturity. One spirit, who had passed at 7 months gestation, explained it this way: "I didn't retreat. I redeployed. I am not gone. I am just stationed where I am most needed." That mother, who had carried intense guilt for years, felt her body release tension for the first time in a decade. Her child had not died in vain, he had chosen the higher path. Sometimes these spirits reveal global information. They speak of events that, at the time of their departure, had not yet happened. One reading from the early 1940s recorded a spirit warning of coming war and the spiritual famine it would cause. The child, who had left the womb at 5 months, told his mother, "Had I stayed, I would have suffered needlessly. From where I am now, I can protect many more." Years later, that same mother would discover that 2 of her nephews, who had entered combat in World War II, both reported uncanny experiences of being protected, one swearing he saw a boy standing in the mist moments before an explosion that should have killed him. In more recent decades, other spirits have described their decisions to exit during times of looming social or planetary upheaval, economic collapse, natural disasters, disease outbreaks. The common thread among them is clarity. They do not speak of trauma, regret, or confusion. They speak of repositioning. These children are often the quiet visionaries, the ones who feel more like elders than infants, even in spirit. They see the macro picture and choose their position accordingly. One spirit, who departed after only 12 weeks in the womb, told her mother during a channeled session, "You would have raised me well, but I needed to reach more than one family. I needed to be available to the world." That same mother went on to start a grief support group that helped thousands of women. She later realized that every step of her healing had been accompanied by guidance, gentle nudges, dreams, ideas that seemed to arrive fully formed. The spirit later confirmed, "I was not meant to be held in your arms. I was meant to move through your voice." These prophets of coming change often guide their families through the very storms they foresaw. Parents who experience this type of loss frequently go on to become more resilient, more open, more spiritually attuned. They report feeling guided, not just in their grief, but in decisions, warnings, and shifts they can't always explain. It's as if the spirit, though unseen, becomes a radar system, a compass, during global disorientation. In times of collective trauma, economic downturns, war, disease, those who've lost a child prematurely may begin to feel a strange strength rising within them. They may hear an inner voice that says, "You've been prepared for this," and in many ways, they have. The spiritual bond, formed with a prophetic soul, alters the parent's frequency. It awakens intuition. It tunes them into the subtle currents of spiritual change. They become, in essence, co-guardians of humanity's unfolding. It's important to note that these spirits are not aloof. They do not detach from emotion or from their families. In fact, they often remain deeply connected to the parent who carried them. They send signs, not just to offer comfort, but to direct, alert, and align. One mother reported seeing the same constellation every night for weeks after her miscarriage, feeling an overwhelming sense that her child was up there. Years later, during a time of political unrest, she received an image during meditation. Her child as a radiant being, holding a scroll, standing beside others, preparing something vast. She heard a single phrase, "This is what I stayed for." We live in a world that often dismisses spiritual guidance unless it comes from institutions, titles, or public voices. But the real prophets may be those who never walked this earth fully. Who came in quietly, scanned the terrain, and left just as gently, so they could begin their real work, holding the vibration of hope from the other side, whispering calm into chaos, guiding humanity, one heartbeat at a time. So if your loss feels strangely timed, if your child left before a period of global unrest, if the pregnancy ended just before a storm hit your life or the world, consider this: they may not have left you. They may have risen to their post, watching, working, serving, not as victims of tragedy, but as architects of light in times of darkness. They are not lost, they are stationed, and their mission is still unfolding. Love does not end where the body does. It doesn't expire with a final breath, or dissolve in the stillness after a missed heartbeat. Real love, 19 me, the kind that forms between a parent and the soul of a child, even if that child never breathes air, lives on. It's not metaphor, it's energy, it's motion. And in the unseen world beyond this one, that love takes on a new role, a new purpose. It becomes part of something far larger, something few people know exists until they've been cracked open by loss. It becomes part of what many spirits describe as the cosmic reservoir of love. This reservoir isn't a concept. It's a real, living system, energetic grid that stretches across dimensions, maintained and sustained by the purest form of human love, the kind that gives without expectation, the kind that mourns and still loves anyway. When a parent loses a child, particularly one they never got to raise or see grow, the love they carry doesn't vanish. It has nowhere physical to go, so it travels upward, outward, and inward. It enters this reservoir, and once there, it is magnified. Spirits of unborn and briefly lived children often describe this phenomenon in striking terms. "Your love became a signal," one spirit said, "and we turned it into light. That light doesn't stay with just one soul. It becomes available to others, other grieving parents, other suffering hearts, other lost spirits searching for comfort. What was once a private grief is transmuted into a communal healing force. And the child who left becomes not just your child, but a love amplifier for the whole world." Many parents report strange experiences after their loss, sevens, feeling deeply moved by someone else's pain, even if they never knew them, feeling connected to strangers in mourning, or waking from dreams in which they comfort other grieving mothers or fathers. These are not random empathic moments. They are the natural result of love energy that has entered the cosmic stream. When your love joins this current, it begins to flow into places where love is needed most, and in doing so, it links you to others who are also navigating their own sorrow. This is the alchemy of divine connection. Love, birthed in pain, becomes medicine for those you may never meet. In the spiritual realm, children who departed early often choose to work with this reservoir directly. They become technicians of love frequency, 19.5, collecting, expanding, and sending healing energy into the hearts of the grieving. One spirit described it this way: "We are the weavers. Every time a mother cries with love in her tears, that thread becomes part of the blanket we wrap around the world." These spirits do not simply rest. They serve. They take the love given to them and make it useful on a scale that transcends time and form. What makes this even more beautiful is that the parent, still on earth, often becomes a conduit for that same energy. Many people who have experienced pregnancy or infant loss find themselves called to help others, to start support groups, to write, to speak, to hold space for the wounded. This is not by chance. It is the love working through them. It is the child's energy continuing its mission. The reservoir doesn't just collect love. It flows it back into the world through open-hearted souls, like rivers branching from a vast, sacred ocean. And this love is intelligent. It knows where it is needed. It finds the lonely, the grieving, the scared, and moves toward them with a frequency that bypasses language and logic. Sometimes it arrives as a dream, other times as a sudden, unexplainable peace in the middle of a breakdown, a song playing at just the right moment, a stranger's words that feel too perfect to be random, a moment of quiet that feels like being held. These are the whispers of the reservoir, the evidence that love you thought had nowhere to go, has in fact found its calling. There are even stories of healing that defy conventional understanding. One woman, deep in depression after her miscarriage, began feeling a sense of calm every time she sat in the nursery she never got to use. It wasn't just memory or hope, it was presence. Years later, after a chance meeting with a spiritual practitioner, she learned that her child had been using her stillness as a channel to send energy to other grieving mothers. "When you sat in the chair," the spirit later said, "I could reach further. Your love became my wings." This is not only healing, it is co-creation. It's the continuation of the parent-child relationship, but in a higher form. Instead of bedtime stories, there are whispered intuitions. Instead of hugs, there are waves of energy, feelings of being guided. Instead of physical milestones, there are spiritual expansions. The bond never breaks. It evolves. And the more the parent opens to this truth, the more powerful the energy becomes. Grief, when held with love, becomes an amplifier. The pain becomes a vessel. And the love that flows through it reaches others like light through stained glass, colored by your story, but illuminating something far beyond it. One spirit described the reservoir as a crystalline structure that pulses with every expression of parental love. Each "I miss you," it said, each picture kept on the wall, each silent birthday, these are deposits, and we turn them into bridges. Bridges between this world and the next. Between people who have never met, but whose hearts beat in the same rhythm of loss and love. Even more astonishing, some spirits report that the reservoir is not only accessible to other humans, but to other souls preparing for incarnation. They draw from this love as nourishment, as grounding, as emotional education. The love you gave may be helping a soul on the other side prepare for their journey into life. You gave more than you knew. You taught love before birth. And that love continues to teach. So often, in the silence that follows loss, parents wonder what to do with all the love that remains. It feels like a river with no mouth, a song with no listener. But the truth is that love is not wasted. It is collected. It is multiplied. It becomes light for others who have no light. It becomes warmth for the freezing. It becomes the hand that steadies someone you'll never meet. In a moment they'll never forget. You may not always feel where it goes. You may not see its effects. But you are part of a network of healing that spans galaxies and generations. You are not alone. You are a node in a living grid of compassion, built not by saints or angels, but by parents, grieving, loving, surviving, and still choosing to feel. And the child you lost is part of that grid, working beside you, through you, with you. Because your love didn't end, it transformed, it rose, And now, it moves across dimensions, unstoppable, uncontainable, and eternal. There is no such thing as an unfinished life. No experience is too short to matter, no soul arrives by accident. These truths may be difficult to hold in the immediate wake of loss, when the silence of an empty room feels deafening, when the weight of what could have been threatens to break the spirit. But in time, and often through the subtle whispers of unseen love, something more profound begins to emerge. What once felt like a tragic interruption begins to reveal itself as a sacred interlude. And in that deeper awareness, we begin to understand, every life, no matter how brief, plays a note in the grand composition of the universe. A note that does not vanish, a note that resonates eternally. Your child was never just a potential, never just a spark that didn't ignite. They were a sound, clear, purposeful, woven into the music of your soul's journey, and into the collective harmony of all who live and love. That sound may not have lasted long in this world, but it continues to vibrate in places you cannot yet see. It is felt in your quiet courage, in your moments of unexpected strength, in the empathy you now carry for others. That sound is not lost, it has joined the symphony. We think of a symphony as grand, sprawling, layered with meaning and emotion, but we forget that it is built note by note, moment by moment. Not every note lingers. Some are short, almost imperceptible, but they matter just as much as the ones that stretch across entire measures. A brief note can create tension or resolution. It can spark contrast or complete a phrase. Remove it, and the music is broken. Your child's life, no matter how short, was one of those divine notes, absolutely necessary to the composition of your life and the lives that unfold around you. The human mind often demands logic. It wants to know why now, why so soon, why us. And while logic seeks reason, the soul recognizes pattern, beauty, and purpose, even when it's wrapped in mystery. What feels like a loss to the physical self is often a realignment at the soul level. What appears to be an ending is often the echo of a sacred beginning. Your child came with a note to play, and they played it perfectly. Some spirits describe their brief time here, whether in the womb or in early infancy, as exactly what was intended. They do not speak of being cut short or robbed of experience, they speak of completion. I came to shift the rhythm, one spirit said. To soften your tempo, to bring in more breath, another explained. You were moving too fast through your life. I came as a rest note, to create space. These souls are not victims of fate. They are conscious contributors to a divine arrangement so expansive we can only glimpse its edges. Even the silence that follows their departure becomes part of the music. Grief, as unbearable as it can feel, is not a void, it's a resonance chamber. It echoes the love that was given, the connection that still exists, and the transformation that continues. It shapes the next movement, it deepens the song. Many parents, in the years after loss, describe how they became different, not weaker, but wiser, not broken, but open. Their grief sharpened their ability to listen, beyond words, beyond logic, into the language of the soul. They became more attuned to beauty, more sensitive to meaning, more compassionate to pain. These are not just coping mechanisms. These are the aftershocks of that sacred note reverberating through their being. Your child is not gone from the music. They are not waiting in silence. They are active still, conducting from beyond, sending timing cues in moments of clarity, raising the volume on joy when it dares to return, quieting the noise when life becomes too loud. Some parents feel this as a presence, others as intuition, and many as sudden synchronicity. Many advise serendipitous events, repeated symbols, songs at just the right moment. These are not accidents, they are orchestrations. One mother, who lost her son in the final month of pregnancy, began to hear music in her dreams, compositions she had never heard before, full and intricate. Each time she woke, she felt an emotional release, as if she'd been held in the arms of someone familiar. Later, during a spiritual session, her son's spirit communicated, "I am writing your healing. You hear it in pieces, but I am playing it whole." Her grief did not disappear, but it changed. It became part of the music. It gave her life a different texture. Fathers, too, carry the song, though often in quieter ways. Many describe moments of overwhelming stillness, where everything slows and something unspoken passes through them. Others find themselves changed in ways they can't articulate, more patient, more open to connection, more present in small, ordinary moments. These shifts are not just outcomes of trauma, they are the echo of a love that never stopped playing. Your child, whether you met them for minutes or never saw them at all, imprinted on you at a soul level. They changed your key signature. You are not the same person you were before, and that is not a sign of damage, it is a sign of resonance. Every life is a chord in the human song. Some ring loud and long, others are subtle harmonies that hold everything together. And some, like your child's, are the soft, sacred tones that only the heart can hear. But without them, the music would be incomplete. This is why no life is wasted, because even the briefest expression of presence leaves an imprint. Even a single note, played at the right time, can change everything that comes after. Your love for your child didn't end, it became melody. Your longing became harmony. And your choice to keep loving, even without answers, became the most beautiful kind of rhythm, the rhythm of a soul expanding through devotion. This symphony is not written by one hand alone, it is a collaboration between the seen and the unseen, between your breath and theirs, between your heartbeat and the energy of the soul you once carried. They may not be in your arms, but they are still on your page, still in your measure, still part of your crescendo. When you smile again, really smile, they are there. When you comfort another grieving soul, they are there. When you pause to feel the beauty of a quiet moment, when a breeze feels like a whisper, when a memory brings not only tears but warmth, they are conducting, guiding, lifting. You are not finishing the song without them, you are playing their note through you, and the universe is listening.